Welcome to the Maple Popcorn Podcast. Today's episode spotlights Mary Walsh, a beloved Canadian icon known for her comedic brilliance and profound impact on television and film. From St. John's, Newfoundland, Mary has had a notable career as an actress, comedian, writer, and director. From her early days with the Newfoundland Travelling Theatre Company to co-founding the comedy troupe CODCO, Mary's journey in entertainment has been marked by bold satire and unforgettable characters. Her portrayal of Marg Delahunty on This Hour Has 22 Minutes has become iconic, blending humor with sharp political commentary. Mary's contributions extend beyond comedy, including directing acclaimed films like Young Triffie, including the memorable appearances in Mambo Italiano, The Divine Ryans, and The Grand Seduction. Her advocacy work for social causes with organizations like Oxfam-Canada reflects her commitment to making a difference both on and off screen. As a recipient of multiple Gemini Awards and the Order of Canada, Mary Walsh continues to inspire generations with her wit, resilience, and unwavering dedication to Canadian storytelling. Join us as we delve into our conversation with Mary and discuss her fascinating journey. So, Ms. Walsh, thank you for joining us today on Maple Popcorn.
Well, thank you for having me.
You are such an icon, and I remember watching your sketches over and over again, and I still do. But what I didn't know was that you wanted to be a journalist before you started sketch comedy. Do you remember the moment you decided to make the switch, and what led to that?
Well, I think that I just didn't do very well in school. I'd started, drinking, and I don't even think I took the exams in grade 11 or whatever the last grade was. And so I was a bit of a failure. And so I couldn't get into journalism school. But then I inadvertently got a job, and I'd been working for alternate papers, doing the odd piece for alternate papers. And I inadvertently got a job with the CBC doing a summer replacement show called Summer Morning. I think it was called Summer Morning. Anyway, I got it because I felt I wasn't going to get it for sure. And I was so relaxed about doing the audition that I actually got it. I should remember that all the time and I was so depressed by that time that I was actually very relaxed, and I could afford to be a lot more relaxed in every situation. So I got the job. I was terrible at it. The only letters we got a letter from a gentleman in Grand Falls who wrote and said, "Who is the mad giggler?" on from 10 to 11. But through that, I got a job working in the theater. Then I got a job in the semi-professional theater. Then I met all these people. I kind of fell into theater. So This Hour is 22 Minutes, which was my idea, but what a great concept for me, where I get to pretend to be a journalist on TV.
And you do such a fabulous job at that, which makes me actually want to ask you, which journalistic traits do you believe have significantly influenced your work, as an actor and as a writer?
Well, I just think that, I just read the story about Alice Munro's daughter in The Star. And of course, it was The Star that released the crack video of Rob Ford. And The Star did this and The Star did that. And they have been very, very brave all the time, haven't they? I mean, because Alice Munro is such an icon.
Absolutely.
And very brave of her daughter to come forward. But apparently she'd come forward to other people before. But only this person at The Star responded to her. So that idea of making the comfortable uncomfortable and giving comfort to the discomforted and giving discomfort to the comfort, always comforted. I'm saying it wrong, but that always appealed to me. The kicking up aspect of it and not kicking down, which sometimes people do. Like I always thought that notion of getting at the truth of a situation always really appealed to me.
Is there a particular guest that you had on any of your shows that you're particularly proud of being able to bring that journalistic quality or making them comfortable, as you just said right now?
Oh, making someone uncomfortable comfortable?
Mm-hmm.
No, that wasn't really our job. We were ambushing politicians. We were ambushing people in power. So we were discomforting the powerful, really.
True.
But I just heard today that Conrad Black is no longer a lord. Lord Fatty Black is not a lord anymore. That was interesting because he was one of the first people I ambushed before I became Marg Princess Warrior. I was just Marg in a house coat, and he gave me $2 and was very rude. I remember, but so he's now no longer a lord. I guess they just do that, do they? At will? Does the Queen or the king now just
Mm-hmm.
decides he doesn't deserve to be a lord of the manor or lord of the realm any longer. Anyway, I loved all the people I ambushed actually, and ended up, like I remember having great respect for them, the politicians, because so many of them came into the job with such great expectations and only realized when they got there that there was only so much that you can do. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very difficult job, a job that I don't care if you paid me, Elon Musk's salary, whatever that might be. I wouldn't take it on. I just don't have the temperament for it. I think you have to be especially tough skinned and especially people who really believe, and I met many of them, believe that they're doing the right thing. Like the people who introduced, Tommy Douglas introduced uh, social medicine in Saskatchewan, and all the doctors went on strike, and everyone in Saskatchewan was really upset because they had to pay so much for doctors. Now they didn't even have a doctor, and so it but he thought that it was the right thing. And when the Parliament got rid of the death penalty,
Mm-hmm.
68% of Canadians felt that was the wrong way to go, and yet they did it. They did it because they felt that it was right. They felt that that was what they should. And so there's some of that seems to be missing these days. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So I want to take it back to those shows that you mentioned. You were the founding troops of two really brilliant, incredible sketch comedy shows, which was, Newfoundland's CODCO as well as This Hour Has 22 Minutes. Walk me back through the emotions that you were feeling when the surrounding the early days and creating those shows, and probably what was missing sort of in the market when it came to content and what you wanted to be able to channel through these sketch comedies.
Hmm. Well, we wanted with This Hour Is 22 Minutes, I would say all of us felt the same way. But what we wanted to do was to take the news of the week and make fun of it. And in a way, I had seen this show when I was really young. That was The Week That Was, which was a British show that basically did that, took the news of the week and made fun of it. They had a folk singer do a song that made fun of the whole week at the end of the show. And I was really, and there was nothing like that. This Hour Has 7 Days was a very serious show
Mm-hmm.
that got taken off the air. It was it did like that show in Quebec now, um, that has guests every week, and they talk about very openly and very frankly about the news of the week. And I thought we could do that in a comedic way, that we could tell the truth, and get a few laughs on the way.
What's your favorite memory then that comes to mind with the even on CODCO and what it stood for?
Well, we had been together as a theatrical troupe in the 70s, in CODCO. And CODCO was a difficult, as all comedy troupes are, difficult because you start off, you're only 18 or 19, and, you just don't know how to be social. You don't know how to be in a social group. Sometimes, you would just laugh until you peed in your pants, kind of. But but there was a lot of tension. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of tension, and we were never sure that we were going to continue to be on the air. Every we weren't the most popular show on the air, but we did fairly well. Kids in the Hall were the same way. If we didn't win Best Comedy, Kids in the Hall won. And I do remember one night after the Canadian Screen Awards, which were called the Geminis then, I think we won half the comedy awards and Kids in the Hall won the other, and then we all got very drunk and necked with each other. I think they necked with each kid in the hall, and they necked with each CODCO person. So that was a big night. But no, yeah, that was a long time ago, and I really feel, I guess 86. So maybe not that long ago, really. I guess I was 34 by then, old enough to have better sense by the time we got on the air in 86. But it was hard. It was difficult, and I remember Andy Jones is always the great peacemaker, and we were always fighting to see who was going to get on, who was on most. Saying, "Well, you had that big sketch, and I haven't been on it." And so Andy said, "Well, let's put numbers near. You get a 3 for if you're the lead in the show, a 2 if you're a major figure, and a 1 if you're just doing background. And then everybody would have, the same amount of, we would try to make everyone equal in the numbers." But then, I remember, I don't know if it was me or someone else who said, yeah, I got 72. I got 70 also, but all my 70 is all 1s and 2s. I don't even have any 3. And, so it was like impossible. I just thought that was so funny that we had a little system of numbers where we could all be equal. We were constantly battling to be equal. That was one of the things that really was important. You know, Nobody was the director. Nobody, well, we did have a director in television, but, as far as our writing and
Hmm.
when we were a theatrical company. And so that seemed to be very, very important. Like nobody could tell us what to do.
Which could be a good thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
We've talked about being a journalist and your time on 22 Minutes, but I have to bring up Marg Delahunty. I was just
Mm.
rewatching some of that from back in the day, and I'm curious about what inspired that character for you.
Well, I'll tell you actually what inspired that character for me. I was doing This Hour is 22 Minutes, and I was feeling, I guess This Hour is 22 Minutes started in 92, so I would have been 40 that year. And I was feeling less than attractive. And so I thought I would cut my bangs straight across in that kind of Edith Head way. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be attractive, at least I'll be interesting. And then I realized that with my hair cut that way, I looked like the warrior princess, Xena,
Yeah.
warrior princess. So I think this is the way it happened. I was just trying to remember because I was writing something about it. I think I was going to Ottawa as Marg in the housecoat to ambush someone. And I said as we were getting ready to leave, to Jeff Dion, who was our producer on the road, I said, I want to do a send up of the Xena Princess Warrior. And he said, I think he might have said, I don't know, why not do Xena Princess Warrior, and
Hmm.
I went, oh, as Marg. And then the brilliant Patty Parsons, who was our costume designer, made me a felt and gold glue costume that looked somewhat like Xena, and the plastic sword from Toys R Us.
I just went back to watch the costumes actually. In any of your videos, I've seen them, and they're hilarious. How did she evolve over the years in terms of when you started with this character at the inception and then became such a beloved figure? When you look back, how do you think she's evolved, and were you surprised at all by the reception?
Well, Rick Mercer and I went to Afghanistan one Christmas. I don't know when it was. Maybe the 10 when the Canadian troops were in Kandahar, and so we were there at Christmas, and Rick was speaking, and he said something that I'd never heard him say before. But he said when she went up as Marg, Princess Warrior, it was like she was somebody's aunt, and I realized I was just going to have to give up ambushing politicians because who can stand up against an ant in a red felt suit with gold glue breasts? So I think that in a way, Marg, what I think why she was maybe my best character is I always wanted to get at the truth of things. And maybe it wasn't the real truth, the full truth, but I often said to people what the truth was that people were saying. I often said to politicians, I often spoke the truth of the people to the people in power. That's what
Hmm.
I think happened anyway, to a certain amount of the people. Like people would be, oh my God, she didn't say that. Like
Hmm.
even like I was always even though I liked Prime Minister Chrétien very, very much because I always felt like, oh, well, at least if I screw up, Chrétien is so funny and he will do something and we'll be fine. We'll get a piece anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I always went after him for not keeping any of their promises, the big liberal red book. And so, I certainly went after the NDP and everyone equally, I think, though in my heart, I may not have been as, upset with them or, and the other thing about Marg that happened to me and I didn't know is I realized, okay, this is going to sound phony, but I realized when you're in close to someone like that, you can't dislike them. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be wishing them ill. I was always saying, look, I'm here to help you. If you're ever going to get rid of the liberals, you're going to have to stop, all the time being against stuff. So it was always, I always had to come from a place of love and like an old auntie who would be giving you advice as to how you could achieve your aims, you know what I mean? And what you were doing wrong right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? And so, but the truth was, when you're that close to someone, another human being, you do kind of lose whatever antipathy you have towards them. And you are just really close to another human being, LinkedIn and yeah.
You know what, Mary? You are a journalist. You definitely took up that mantle for sure. And as you said, that's what we admire about you is how you went up to them and you're speaking through to power. But was there anyone who made you nervous about any public figure that you approached that made you nervous?
They all made me very nervous. There
Really?
was only one opportunity to do it, and because we mostly did it as an ambush,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so there was only one. So I was very, very nervous all the time, and all the other people there who didn't have on terrible costumes, like they had their Burberry trench coats and their good leather, but I think that helped me too because I just felt so done in and so full of shame for I thought, oh shag it, I might as well just go for it anyway.
Was there anyone's
So
reaction that surprised you the most?
does that surprised me the most? Well, hmm who surprised me the most? I don't think anybody really. The terrible thing, and I have to confess this now, is I didn't care about them. I mean, I cared about them, but I didn't care what they had to say. I
Right.
usually didn't let them say anything because I had to get out what I had to say.
I
And then I
noticed
had to get
that.
out of there before, I could, because like when we were ambushing Mike Harris, the security were trying to put us out. And so I had to go in the toilet and stand on the toilet, like to hide. And you know what I mean? So you were often in danger of getting the toss, and so, and oh my God, I waited for 10 cold hours outside after
Wow.
the big Senate scandal to get Mike Duffy. He wasn't very gettable, I have to say. He was, it's more and more difficult to talk to the people who represent us, and they more see themselves as uh, as that they don't see themselves as this as serving us, but they see us as serving them,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it comes to creating good sketch comedy, what would you say is the secret sauce? It feels like you, having been done this for decades, you know the ins and outs, and you probably have a sort of method or the right way. What do you think is the secret sauce to make a good sketch comedy, or even a good sketch comedy character?
Well, there's we always went about it, certainly in CODCO, we always went about it by improvising,
Mm-hmm.
taping the improv, and then writing out the best lines from that. We'd improvise about 150 times to do, say, Morton the Dying Child Molester, the musical, and then we would just take the best songs and the best from the improvisation. And I did that. We didn't do that a lot in this hour because we just had we on Monday we had nothing except the news of the week, and Friday we did a live show in Halifax, and on Monday night it went out to the nation. So we didn't have much time to be doing that sort of stuff. We mostly wrote on our own. So what if I was writing Jakey Dunn? I would write what I wanted to say, then I would write what I wanted to say funny, then I would try to write what I wanted to say shorter. So most of the really good sketches that I've had happen over the year have come out of real life.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes in the morning, and says this something happened on the way in, and then you work around that, or you all start talking about Christmas at your house, and then you end up with a Christmas sketch, or you know what I mean. It comes out of
Mm-hmm.
talking to each other, and then standing on your feet, and then improvising, then getting the best of that improv. Like, we never saw improv as an end. We saw improv as a journey toward a
Mm-hmm.
sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're craving more Canadian film inspiration, head over to telfilm.ca/see-it-all, where you can explore a wealth of film collections available on your favorite streaming platforms. From iconic classics to exciting new releases, there's something for everyone right at your fingertips. If you're loving the insights from our esteemed guests, be sure to subscribe to the Maple Popcorn Podcast on your preferred platform, and don't forget to leave us a review. When it comes to, comedy, the kind of comedy that you do, whether it is for the sketch or in film or TV, in one of your interviews, you mentioned that comedy is kind of dark work. And we can see it in your book as well, Crying for the Moon and your show Dancing with Rage. You seem kind of drawn to the darker side of comedy. And I kind of love that, by the way. What is it about the darker aspects of comedy that you find so compelling?
Well, in a way, all comedy is dark, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's Buddy slipping on the banana peel, which is the very basis
The
of
physical
comedy.
comedy, right.
And then it's somebody else getting hurt, isn't it? It's not
Mm-hmm.
you're laughing. I'm not necessarily laughing at Buddy slipping on the banana peel
Mm-hmm.
personally, but it is, one of the standard tropes of comedy. I am attracted to. I think that I am just attracted to that because I was I I didn't grow up with my family. I grew up next door to my family. I was a little girl who grew up next door to my family. And I always felt outside and alone and things like that. Nobody ever talked about it. I couldn't talk about it with my two maiden aunts and an uncle who brought me up because it would seem so ungrateful. I couldn't talk to my mother about it because she was terrifying. Years and years and years later, my favorite sister, Madonna, had died in Ontario. Now, Madonna, unlike most Newfoundlanders, didn't like Newfoundland at all. She loved Ontario. And
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah. She was dying, and she said to her children, she said to the youngsters, I don't want any fuss. Just cremate me and throw me off the overpass at the 401. She loved the 401. I think it represented freedom to her or something. So the kids said, oh, Mom, we can't do that. And she went, well, fuck you. Do what you like. And so that's what they did. They cremated her and they brought her home and they scattered her ashes in around Conception Harbor, which is where she really didn't like, and in around the pond where the big dark fir trees are that she found so oppressive. Anyway, that day, nobody had told me that it was happening. So I happened to call my sister, my other sister, and when she got off the phone, she said to my brother Greg, that was Mary. She's really upset that we didn't tell her that Madonna, we're scattering Madonna's ashes. And my brother Greg went, Jesus, when's she gonna get it? I mean, we gave her away when she was 8 months old, didn't we? I mean, we all went out to Alberta that time, never told her. What are we going to have to do? Write her a fucking book? And it made me laugh so much because it was like a recognition of something that had always broken my heart. And somebody was actually saying it out loud that, you know what I mean? And actually, it was so much a part of everything that that somebody could make a joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so freeing, and it just seemed like, oh, it just took a huge load off my back. And I remember telling that story in a makeup room in Ontario, and people went, and I went, no, it's funny. They went, yeah, funny and really, really sad. but I guess, they're dark comedy, that's what we're supposed to do, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to satirize. We're supposed to make the powerful uncomfortable. We're supposed to satirize situations. We're supposed to be able to call out things that and make people laugh about them. And so they see how ridiculous it is, right?
That's hilarious. Which kind of, when listening to you say that, I kind of wondered what you think about the evolution of comedy. because things that would be, with that comedy that could have passed back in the day, now with cancel culture, and the comedy has changed, especially with comedians that they've said that as well, and actors do feel that they don't have that sort of they don't feel that they can be liberal enough when
You
it comes
have
to.
the freedom. You still
Mm-hmm.
can say anything. Nobody's going to arrest. They're not going to come to Dave Chappelle's house and arrest him and put him in some kind of camp. People are going to say Dave Chappelle is an asshole, and they're going to go. Some people are not going to hire him. But always comedy was that way. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people were shocked when, that great piece of satire, the what was it? I can't remember, but it was the suggestion that to solve the Irish problem, we should fatten up Irish babies and feed them to Irish people, because there was a hunger problem at that point. It was
Mm-hmm.
called, I can't remember, but anyway, it was like the 15th or 16th century, but it's probably the greatest piece of satire. But people were outraged. They were like saying, "What is he saying? Oh my God." And they couldn't see, but he actually changed some. The strength of that piece that he wrote actually changed some legislation in the English Parliament about Ireland. So, I mean, in that way, really, really good. But we often made fun of the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church, and we were denounced from the steps of the Basilica of St. John the Baptist by Father Jim Hickey, who later died in jail, of course. So, there was, the people have always, comedy is a queer thing for sure. Like, it's like, you're not going to hit everyone, are you? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess that is how, like sitcoms, like Jerry Seinfeld was about nothing, they said, but it really was about a lot of things, I suppose. But to appeal to everyone, that is a real art, isn't it? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how do you get there? But comedy's always been very dangerous. Look at poor old what's his name, who they charged. Oh, for God's sake, I wish I could remember some names. But a Jewish comedian in New York who they hauled off the stage because he'd used foul language. Um, you know, um, they put him in jail. He died of a heroin overdose in the end. But it's never easy. Comedy is not easy, and everybody's not going to want you to be making fun of their little gold statuettes, or whatever iconic thing they believe is,
Mm-hmm.
untouchable. Oh, you can't say that, about that. That's my thing.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about your film roles. Actually, on the other side of comedy that we talk about is on the dramatic side, and I believe your film roles, they tend to be a little more dramatic than television. What draws you to explore these dramatic characters, and how does it differ from your approach to television?
I haven't my working in film, I directed a film called Young Triffie back in 2006. It was the only film that got no stars in the Globe and Mail. Thank you so much, Globe and Mail. Uh, Film comedy is hard because how can you sustain an hour and a half? Like,
Mm-hmm.
a half hour sitcom is about as much as you can do, and sketch is even better because it's only 3 minutes. But because plot really gets in the way of comedy in film. But I just saw Young Triffie again, and I was quite pleased with it. It had, Andrea Martin and uh, um, good God. I'm so glad you're interviewing me now when I can remember nothing. But other film roles that I've done, I can't even remember them really, because nothing that I've done has ever asked me to push beyond. My comedy, it seems to me, this is what I believe, maybe nobody else believes this, but that they are real people.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not doing though I might do that sometime, but it's a real person. So that my film roles were real people too, but the lines weren't funny. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing. You have to in comedy feel it, and you have to in drama feel it. It's acting, right? And like, I feel like somebody said, and it was really great on comedians in cars, that no actors can really do comedy because they don't have that little thing in their head where they see the funny in the tragedy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you won't say it for a long time, but then you can see the funny in everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actors don't have that, but that comedians, because they have good timing and stuff, they make really good actors mostly, I think. You see Woody Harrelson started off in comedy, George Clooney,
Right.
Martin Short is so good in the dramatic pieces he's done. Yeah, like it's like I think that comedians, because of timing and because things, you're not putting on stuff on the front, you're pulling up stuff from inside. And so you know how to do that from comedy. And so you're just doing it in drama.
Mm-hmm.
Same, right?
Yeah. Do you have a preference of one over the other?
Well, I prefer comedy because that's what I do, and I can't help seeing the funny side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. But I do like, like I don't like scary movies, but like I did a scary movie and I loved that. I was the person who killed everyone. I hope everyone's seen that movie, because it turns out in the end I killed everyone. But I thought after, gee whiz, if you're going to be a mass murderer, you really got to get in shape, because there's all that stabbing and
Mm-hmm.
the hauling the dead bodies around. It's really like they should offer a course, an aerobics course for a killing aerobics course, like. But really, if that is your decision, you want to be a killer,
Mm-hmm.
you really got to get in shape before you go at it. I think something I learned from doing that
After
role.
doing the stabbing, the horror movie role.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I was looking at the list of credits, acting credits. It's Closet Monster, Mambo Italiano, Sweetland, The Grand Seduction, The Adventure. So each character in each project is so distinct. How do you decide which roles? How did you decide which roles to pursue? What's the one thing that you were looking for, as you mentioned, whether it was a horror movie part?
Well, there's a few roles I've turned down, and I've been quite wrong. Um, a movie called The Hanging Garden, which turned out to be quite a brilliant movie, I have to say. By Tom Fitzgerald was the writer and the thing. I read it and I just didn't get it, and I thought, and I remember getting on the phone with the producer going, "Nobody ever spoke this way ever in the history of the world. I'm definitely not doing it, and don't bother to send me any more script." You know, could I have been wronger? I mean, first of all, the arrogance. I could have just said a polite no, thank you. I'm going to be busy in that period. But no, no, I had to share my thoughts. That was a long time ago now, and I hope I'm over that sort of behavior. But so I've made those kinds of mistakes. So mostly these days, I just go, well, that'll kind of be fun. That'd be fun to
Mm-hmm.
do. And I really do like, mostly that first day is a bit tense, going on a new set and stuff. But I mostly just enjoy it. Like I just did a film with Sheila McCarthy, where we were two old bats in an old age home, where we have some capers and some fun. And that was just, it was just great to do. I love working with other actors. They're so generous and so kind and so good and so much fun. This wasn't a comedy per se. I think I'm dead in the end, which is very tragic. But Sheila lives on, so that's good. But the but like mostly I say yes to things. My time of saying no to stuff. I guess I wouldn't do anything that I thought was wrong or
Mm-hmm.
unethical or um, I guess horror films where I go around killing everyone is not exactly ethical.
You know what? I'm
But
actually so
I
gonna
do
pull up
get very
that.
badly punished at the end, so I pay for my wrong. But no, I'm sure but I mostly just say yes these days.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about a bit about your accolades, this time all the awards. You won a Canadian Screen Award as well for your role as Allison in Happy Place. What was it like receiving that kind of recognition from your peers?
Well, that was great. I I worked, on Happy Place, and it was wonderful. A wonderful group of women up in Muskoka, And it was it was based on a true story, and it was really tragic. And it was a group of women who had all been brutally raped or abused to such an extent that they were all trying to take their own lives. So they were in this the institution hoping to get better. Not a lot of laughs. I was the light relief, and I had drunk bleach so that my whole stomach and everything had to be cut out. So it was great. It was great. It was working with, again, wonderful people, being directed by a fantastic director, working with great producing people. It really helps to get recognized, and it really helps you try to sell, because I'm often trying to sell my own stuff. Like, I'm doing a series now called The Mrs. Downstairs. We're in the first season. It's a web series on Five, where I play an absolutely horrible woman who lives downstairs from quite a sweet and neurotic young man who lives upstairs. And as the seasons go on, I get worse and worse to him. Yeah, so, and so it helps to get recognition, because then it helps people go, oh, well, she did that. Maybe she can do this too, right?
Even the Order of
Yeah.
Canada. So I was just going to ask you if there is a specific award that holds special significance for you?
The Governor General's Award for Lifetime Achievement holds special significance, not because of the award itself, but because of the way the award was given. Oh my God, what a great time. I had been in hospital just before, so very sick. They thought I had emphysema, but actually I just had dicky lungs, bad lungs. So I was not feeling very well. So we go up to Ottawa to have this, and it's like a week-long event. And like the guys from South Park are there because their favorite band was getting put in there.
Tragically Hip?
And what?
Was it Tragically Hip?
No, not Tragically Hip. Way before that. Okay, it'll come
Is
to
it
me.
Canadian?
Okay, so the guy from the Who, there was a guy from the Who there because somebody that he was doing a project with somebody from Stratford who was getting inducted, and each person who's getting inducted has a little film made about them, and somebody speaks to them. My little film was made by Sherry White, who I adore, and Andy Jones spoke for me. But it was just full of the most extraordinary people. Like, to get to talk to the, Geddy Lee is the drummer of the band.
Okay.
You don't know who Geddy Lee is?
Bassist of Rush?
My God. You are very
Rush.
Rush. Yeah, Rush. Exactly. And they love Rush, and they use Rush all the time, apparently. So they were delightful to meet, and it was just a big deal. No, it just I must say it really was something. Yeah.
As someone who's been creating content in Canada for decades, what do you think is particularly unique about Canadian content when compared to other regions?
Oh boy, because I'm old, of course, I always go, oh, it's worse, but it isn't worse at all, because when we started, oh, for heaven's sakes, I remember a French, was it Radio Canada, came to do an interview with me years after the CODCO TV series, and he said, do you feel like, how did you get on the air, like national TV? How did you do it? Just a little company of no ones from, Nowheresville. I thought, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know how we did it. I guess we must have been good or something.
I like the accent
But
input.
but I guess there was a sense in those days. There was more regional production, which was great, because I got to do 3 TV series before I ever got on national TV. One of them went on. I think all 3 of them went on regional in the summer. And so the CBC at that point was much more about regions and not so centralized. And so we've become much more centralized, for good or bad, I don't know. But I miss that. And I think that, that it was like if you had to play NHL hockey and there were no A teams or B teams, there was no minor league teams, and you never get good. The good people would never get to get better. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the kind of way that it used to be in the old days, right across the country. Vancouver would have its own regional programming. The Atlantic region had a regional program. We had regional program here in Newfoundland. And so I miss that. I miss that. you know, when we did Mambo Italiano, it was out of Montreal, Cinemaginaire. And I remember Danielle coming to Toronto to TIFF because it came to TIFF. And she said, there are no posters of the English Canadian actors anywhere in Toronto. And I said, look, Danielle, we're lucky somebody's not hitting us up the side of the head with a piece of 2x4, let alone putting up posters of us. There is a general sense in English Canada that we're no good, that art is a waste of time because we're hewers of wood and drawers of water. And that's how we perceive ourselves. And art or, film or, people just think Canadian film is terrible. That's not true. I mean, some Canadian film is terrible, but some British film is terrible. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of American film is
Right.
terrible. There are some extraordinary gems. Canadian television, who would watch Canadian television? Well, you would hope that Canadians would, and that we would have our sense of ourselves as a country. Are we a country? Are we not a country? If we are a country, then we
Mm-hmm.
have to support the art, which is our culture, which is the expression of us as who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wish that we would, but that seems to me it hasn't changed, even though, we've got all these fabulous Canadian writers and Canadian filmmakers. But of course, as soon as you become even a famous Canadian filmmaker, you head right down to Hollywood because you get a bigger audience, right? Look at all those fabulous Quebec filmmakers who've, gone down there and done
Mm-hmm.
so well. So we struggle with that because it's like the mouse next to the elephant, and we have to always pay attention to what the elephant is doing, because they could just step right on you. Like if you're the mouse, you're very focused on where the elephant
Mm-hmm.
is, what they're doing, what kind of mood they're in, even. And so it's unfortunate in that way, but I have great hopes for us. We're a new country. When we came here, we learned a lot of things from the indigenous people of this country. Well, we learned, how to get around and they helped us with the trade routes and all that. Like the fact that we do have social medicine, that the fact that to a certain extent, we still do feel responsible for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we don't hang together, we will surely hang alone. That does seem to be slipping away a little. There is a feeling sometimes that we're losing that sense of the collective good.
I was just gonna follow up on that. You said what do you think is particularly unique about Canadian and Indigenous content that when compared to other regions?
I can't speak for Indigenous content, but what is lauded as the best film ever made in Canada is The Fast Runner, that was made in 2001 by an Inuit filmmaker in Nunavut. So, that it has been lauded all over the world globally as the best Canadian film ever made. And that was made under extraordinary circumstances. And the National Film Board, I think, was involved to a certain extent in that, which people say we should get rid of the National Film Board because what do we need that for anymore? We should get rid of the CBC. What do we need that for? We are a vast country held together by little strings of community, like the CBC. We get to see each other like the National Film Board. One of Canada's greatest philosophers said that a country is not marked by its history, because really all history has taught us is that history teaches us nothing, but is marked by its geography. And so we have this massive landmass, right? We have room to let other people be, room to grow, room to expand, room to be open-hearted, room to be kind, room. And then the north is right up behind us, the mysterious north that we know almost nothing about. And the biggest river in Canada is the Mackenzie River. Now, in the States, the largest river is that one, the Mississippi, or I think it's the Mississippi, that there's so many songs about and myths about and stuff. And, only two people outside of okay, say five people have ever even been on the Mackenzie River. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a vast wonderland that's still opening up to us, and that we have this opportunity to be like Emily Carr said, isn't it grand to be part of something to be part of Canada. It's such a magnificent. It's not. We don't own it in any way, and it's not. We don't deserve it in any way, but still, we are here, part of this magnificent country.
You know, as
Yeah.
we wrap up, I did want to ask you something that I usually ask actors or filmmakers who've been in the industry, or even who's just started. But how would you describe the legacy of your body of work?
Oh, gee whiz, that's interesting. How do people? I'm not really thinking about legacy. I can't open a big national park like John Curtin did at the as for his legacy. There's not, I feel like I was lucky enough to be part of when we started working in the theater in comedy. Newfoundland was a joke. The biggest selling books in Quebec were called Newfie jokes. If you spoke to somebody, when I went to Ryerson, if somebody asked you where you were from, you were loath to say that you were from Newfoundland because people just thought that was hilarious, that we were horny handed fisher folk who were extraordinarily stupid and spoke in a way that was inexplicable to anyone. I've been lucky enough to be part of a generation of people where I think that has changed. I don't think people think about Newfoundlanders in that way anymore. I think that the culturally that has changed, and I think that the culture of Newfoundland was at the forefront of changing that. I think a lot of other things have happened also, but I think that the culture, the cultural workers kind of led the way in that way, and so. People don't think of us that way anymore. I mean, people. I remember our makeup artist, who was the most wonderful person, but she came to. We were shooting in Halifax, and she came to Newfoundland. We were shooting in the Gould somewhere, and she said, "Why did people come here?" And I said, "Well, this is the Goulds, and it's kind of a microclimate, so you can grow." And she went, "No, I mean, why did people come here at all? Like, you know what I mean? The whole
Mm-hmm.
notion of Newfoundland was beyond the comprehension of our Canadian brethren altogether. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why, and they were always writing articles in the Globe and Mail about how, we were all on welfare and what else did we want and blah, 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 blah. And that seems to have died off pretty well. And I think that we had a hand in that, all us workers at the cultural forefront.
Yeah, that's incredible. You've been a part of a legacy of changing that from Newfoundland. Which, by the way, I wanted to ask you, what is it about Newfoundland and its people that fosters such a creative and thriving environment?
Well, we were a country, I guess, and so we had to make everything ourselves, including our art and culture. So that we didn't stop being a country till 1949. So there's still lots of that kind of memory. It's still in our DNA that we, So there's and there is a way of seeing things. It may be because we have Ray Guy used to always say, one of our great satirists, Ray Guy used to always say, we have a genetic pool the size of a pudding bowl. And so maybe those people who were in that pool were really funny or something. People always used to say, because times are hard and people have had to find a way to get through. But I mean, times are hard all over the world and
Mm-hmm.
people aren't necessarily funny, right? So who knows? Who knows what? But it is a place to be. Sherry White, who's a filmmaker and a showrunner, said the other day that we should that the Newfoundland film and theater community should get an Oscar for community, because people are so, it's like, they wrote that play about people who helped the people who landed in Gander, 'cause it's called Come From Away. And like an old fellow out in
Mm-hmm.
Gander said to me there last week, he said, "Well, what the fuck do you think we're going to do, Mary? Let them starve to death?" Like, no Newfoundlander would ever even
Mm-hmm.
notice that people gave people sandwiches at the gym, because of course that's what you do, because we're not that far from living subsistence.
Mm-hmm.
When you live subsistence, you realize that you have to keep the whole community running, or your little life will just drop off. I don't think it's like that. Maybe if you're living on Bloor Street in Toronto, I'm not sure, but it is like that always, but you're not as aware of it. But we're still very aware that we depend on each other, right?
I definitely
Yeah.
support and champion that Oscar for community in Newfoundland, because you're definitely not going to get sandwiches in Toronto at the gym for sure.
But remember when it got dark in Toronto? Remember when the lights went out and everybody in Toronto, in all the neighborhoods, people were cooking stuff on their barbecues for the neighborhood. They were cooking big pots of things, and everybody was helping each other. And like even in Britain, where, let's face it, they're not that nice, when the bombs were falling, people were really, really came together to help each other. And so in hard times, that definitely happens. I think that when you have money, you're divorced, aren't you, from your fellow person, because you always pay someone to do whatever it is you need to get done.
Yeah.
Cut your toenails or something, or whatever you want a friend to do. I don't ask my friends to cut my toenails, by the way. I just like to say that.
Thank you for noting that on the record. Thank you so much, Ms. Walsh. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and for all your insight. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Take care, darling.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Maple Popcorn Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on your preferred platform, give us a rating, and leave us a review. The Maple Popcorn Podcast is produced by The Brand is Female and powered by Oxfam-Canada. For more Canadian film inspiration, please visit telefilm.ca/see-it-all. I'm your podcast host, Marriska Fernandes, and thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to follow Oxfam-Canada and The Brand is Female on all social media platforms.